Hey everyone, Anthony Venuto here with InTouch Mortgage Solutions. It's Friday, Finance Fridays, and thank you again for tuning in for another episode. On this episode, we're going to be talking about the Ontario elections, the NDP, the Liberals, and the Conservatives, their plan for housing, and what it means for you as a homeowner, a home buyer, and especially if you're an investor. You don't want to miss this. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Over the past few weeks, we've been getting several phone calls from a lot of our clients, whether they be the homeowners, existing homeowners, future homeowners, and a lot of investors calling, having a conversation about obviously the election, the road to the election for the Ontario NDP, the Conservatives, and the Liberals, what their platforms are going to look like. And as we started to get some more data this week on them, I thought it would be a great time to do a little video to have a little bit of a discussion about their platforms and what it means if you're a homeowner, a home buyer, and especially an investor. So let's have a conversation about that and basically understand and unpack some of the things that we're seeing as these election promises come out. Now, before we get into the campaigns and what they're discussing, whether you're a conservative, a liberal, NDP, it doesn't really matter. Obviously, if you're a home buyer or home owner, these are things that you're going to want to pay attention to as it can impact you, especially if you're an investor. So first and foremost, a lot of conversation we've been getting from our investors is changes to down payments and potential regulations on capital requirements in 2023, and I wanted to have a conversation about it now. So basically, I wanted to bring your attention to this article here in the Better Dwelling online publication talking about Canadian bank regulator confirms investor mortgage reduction coming next year. So obviously, this is very important for investors. Why? Because the Basel Committee, basically based out of 28 jurisdictions, central banks, have come together with OSFI, which is basically the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions here in Canada. And they're basically coming out and saying, look, we're going to increase capital requirements for investor mortgages as part of the domestic implementation of the Basel III reform package in banks fiscal Q2 2023. We are increasing the risk weights and thus capital required for investor mortgages compared to the risk weights for home or owner-occupied properties. So this is something that's going to be very interesting for investors, first and foremost, above and beyond what is happening with the elections in Ontario, but basically looking at a nationwide, countrywide change. So is this going to mean that, obviously right now in Ontario, if you're purchasing a rental property, you need about 20% to put down. If you own an existing property or existing rental, you need to put 20%. And now are they going to basically up that amount to, let's say, 25, 30, 35%? What will it be? We don't know necessarily at the moment, but they are advising us, hey, next year, watch out, we're going to increase capital requirements. Does it also mean that they're going to basically look at how investors or people that are buying rental properties are going to access their funds? Are they going to be able to refinance? Are they going to be able to use their lines of credits if they have adequate line of credit room to purchase investment properties? And what will that in turn do to the housing market? What will it do for the amount of rental properties out in the marketplace here in Canada? Obviously, only time will tell. And make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure you hit that like and share buttons, get that content out there, hit that notification bell so that when we post content like this, so that we can get more information out there to Canadians, especially investors, you'll be able to fully get an understanding of what we're talking about and see exactly what those changes will be. Shifting gears, I wanted to have a quick conversation about obviously the platforms between the NDP, the Conservatives, and the Liberals. The NDP and the Conservative are very similar in their platforms in regards to tackling the supply side of the equation. So the Conservatives, as well as the NDP, are looking to build 1.5 million new homes over the next 10 years. And there are some differences in the platforms. Obviously, the NDPs want to introduce a first-time home buyers plan. If you're making under $200,000, they want to be able to give a little bit of money back to home buyers. Obviously, it's very early on right now to see exactly how they plan to execute it, what the parameters within those decisions are. But the Liberals as well are the ones that are planning to also tackle the supply side. But they're very, very aggressive on investors and on the demand side of the equation. And we'll get into that right now. So basically, if we look at this article published on May 9th, it is something that talks about Ontario Liberal Housing Plan puts land speculators on notice. And right off the hop, we get that feeling that they're tackling, speculators, investors. And here are some of the notations or the takeaways that are basically set forward early on, is that the Liberals' plan for housing affordability will also ban new non-resident ownership and put a tax on empty homes, introduce a use it or lose it levies on speculation sitting on serviced land who have approved building permits, and use the funds generated to get more affordable housing built, bring back rent control on all homes across Ontario, enforce large fines for persistently negligent landlords, regulate home inspections and make home inspections a legal right, and ensure buyers are refunded sooner for canceled housing projects with significantly higher interest rates on lost deposits. So now that we see the list of items, you can see that obviously not in here is the amount of homes that they want to build. That was something in the federal budget that obviously was important. And I think it's important to all parties across the board, but we can see here, and we're going to dissect a couple of the notations here that they're talking about. So first and foremost, the ban on non-resident ownership and put a tax on empty homes. We know that the Liberal government wants to ban foreign buyers for the next 2 years. Obviously, that is a major push to get those people out of the market, to allow Canadians who are here and are able to buy and can afford it to purchase homes in here. But also one important thing is the vacancy tax. This is something that's very important, and we have other provinces that do have vacancy taxes. So here in Ontario, I think the idea right now is to put a 5% tax on non-residents who own property that are vacant. So basically, that is something that's going to push, if you do own a property, you're from overseas, get that property sold or get it rented. If you are a Canadian citizen and you have a vacant property, same applies. I think they might do around the 2%. They're talking around 2% tax for existing residencies. But also the major push here is to basically push that demand to, if you own a home and you have it empty and you're not renting it out, either sell it or rent it out. Introduce the use it or lose it levy. This is something that's very interesting, and this applies to either land speculators and home builders. If you own a piece of land and you have permits and everything available to you, build on it right away. Is basically start the process, use it or lose it. Does it mean that if you maybe hold back, are you going to lose your permits and have to reapply at the cost basically to you, the home builder, the developer, or are they going to put a tax? Right? This is something that we don't know yet. So for example, some thought process that I have when I'm looking at this data is, if the Liberal government taxes it and let's say they tax you 1% or 2%, but appreciation is, let's say 10 or 12%, are you still, as a land owner, going to want to build or wait for those prices to go up before you start to develop? We don't know. Obviously, this is way too early to tell, and they haven't really given us details how they plan to do this, use it or lose it. Liberals want to bring back rent control across Ontario. Obviously, something that I'm a big proponent of. Obviously, it's important to have rents controlled for people that are in particular situations. Obviously, if you're in a current rent and you've been renting for a long time, you can't just go up there and increase that lease amount by a substantial amount. It's very important to have a rule in place like we do now. But obviously, is there going to be a rent control if those people leave and you're now putting the market back on fair market value to get rent? How are they going to do fair market rents? Is it going to be across the board? Is it going to be for specific, specific maybe lower income rental? Is it going to be across the board for any rental? Let's see exactly how they plan to enforce this through the Bill of Rights for home buyers, right? So this is something that's been on the federal budget for 2022. It's actually been something that they've been talking about for the longest time, I think since 2015. Now they want to basically look at regulating home inspections and make home inspections a legal right. I think this is a very important legal process, or there's a little bit of things that we would look at when you look at home inspections, talking to professionals in the industry. Obviously, young buyers getting in there, we talk to them all the time. They don't get a home inspection. They don't even have the opportunity. If you were buying in the last little while in these hotter markets, didn't get a chance to put any conditions in. I think at least a home inspection would be very value added, because it gives that home buyer an understanding of the condition of the home and what the costs are to maintain that home and things that need immediate attention so that they can be prepared. However, on the flip side of it is, if you do implement this as a mandatory rule or law, what happens if, for example, the home buyer doesn't get the financing? Can they exit through the home inspection clause? These are things that we need to address and understand more fully when we look at implementing these rules, especially in the real estate purchasing transaction, how these things are going to happen. Also, they want to ensure buyers are refunded sooner for canceled housing projects with significantly higher interest rates and lost deposits. This is something that I think is important. It should have been there from the beginning. There should have been some regulation in there from the get-go. Obviously, we've seen a lot of Canadians who went to go purchase pre-construction condos or homes, and obviously maybe those projects got canceled. But years down the road, and obviously the price of homes have come up, interest rates have come up, so they were maybe locked into a rate, maybe they were given a good opportunity, and then all of a sudden that project was canceled, and they're basically the builders giving back them this very small amount of money that they put down, which won't go as far today as it did maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago. So this is something that's important to understand. Also on this notation is, will they implement something about, building costs? If the builder is going to come back to the client and say, look, we anticipated X for the budget. Now it's why you owe us 100,000, you owe us 90,000, you owe us 300. We've seen some of these in the news lately where, the builders have been going back to the client saying you owe us this amount of money unless you don't want to close. So these are some things that we need to look at when you're looking at the Ontario election promises from the Liberals, the NDP, and the Conservatives, is understanding these are election promises, not necessarily something that may happen. And if it does, if they do get elected, if this party does win, how long will it take for these projects or these actual implementations to happen? And how feasible will it be? Because the biggest thing when you're building homes and you have, provincial control, which slips down into the municipal reins where you have to put those shovels in the ground, how does it happen? How is that basically going to make it easier for builders to build, right? And with the higher cost, obviously inflation being the number one concern, cost of fuel, the cost of material, the cost of labor with all the strikes that are happening right now. Obviously, there's a time horizon here, but obviously, is the home going to be cheaper today to build or wait? When is this going to happen? So I wanted to have those questions. I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to leave them, and we want to hear from you. We love to read these comments, so please feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit the like, share, and subscribe button and the notification bell, so when we do get more information about each party's decisions and how they plan to execute them, we'll do a video, and we'll leave the video here, hoping everyone has a great Friday and an even better weekend ahead. Until next week, stay tuned and have a great weekend.